everybody. Welcome to Lead Like a Boss. This is George K, and I've got another great guest for you today, Mikael Dia. I hope I got that right, Mikael.
You did.
Excellent. We didn't practice beforehand, so usually I do. Funnelytics, it's a great company. We'll talk about that. Mikael is a multi-entrepreneur, someone who has really done exactly what an entrepreneur should do in terms of grow, scale, pivot, done a lot of things, started humbly. Mikael, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have a conversation and chat about a lot of these things. I don't know if I did everything the way I should do it, but we'll dive into that, I'm sure.
You'd be one hell of an egomaniac if you said yeah to that, I think.
Yeah, seriously.
All right. So we talked a little bit about, this podcast before we got on, and I wanted to try to make it different from what a lot of folks have heard from you. But obviously, we got to give my audience some backstory. So Why don't you give us a little bit of backstory of what was your early inspiration to decide to not go the typical, get an education, climb the corporate ladder, become an executive, and, like that? Why did you choose to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, that was never the path. I was going down the normal path. Like I went to high school. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do after high school.
Who does at high school?
Yeah, which is a weird thing, right? Like you're 16, 17 years old and you're like, okay, pick your career now, pick your major, and that's what you're going to do.
Mom was doing my socks last week. Exactly. Now you're asking me to pick my career? What?
Exactly. And so I remember I decided to go into engineering, civil engineering specifically. And my rationale, my thought process was, okay, well, my dad was an engineer before he became a banker. So I was always good at math. I was always good with numbers. So my parents kind of, pushed me and said, look, engineering's a good baseline and you can't go wrong with that to get started, no matter what you want to do. And I was like, okay, fine. That makes sense, I guess. And then they're like, what kind of engineer do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know. I like Lego. So maybe bridges and let's do that. So I studied civil engineering for 4 years, and I was, typical university college kid, right? Like you party a lot, you hang out with your friends, you kind of go to class here and there. But I had no idea about entrepreneurship, really. Like no one in my family was an entrepreneur. It wasn't really something that we even thought about. And as I was kind of approaching the end of my university years and my degree, I knew I didn't want to be an engineer. I knew that for sure. And I was like, okay, we're already multiple years in now. I'm not going to go backwards at this particular stage because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to be an engineer. I wanted to make more money. I wanted to be able to, I didn't want to work for 20 years before I got to a stage where, so there's all these things. And near the end of my kind of journey there, I decided to start a t-shirt business with a couple of friends, right? So that's the first time I started kind of venturing on my own in a sense.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
You're out having beers and pizza with your buddies and someone says, hey, let's start a t-shirt company. And then you say, okay, let's do a t-shirt company. Come on, there's got to be more to that story than just that.
So not really, actually. So it was 3 of us. I was living at the time with my roommate, who is one of my best friends and still to this day. And another one of my close friends from high school, he loved to sketch ideas, right? So it was his designs, it was his sketches. They were all very hip hop related. We grew up on hip hop and we listened to a lot of, so they were all very pun related, I guess, in kind of that space. So he had this sketchbook of all of these ideas of what would be cool on a t-shirt in a sense. So he approached me. He's like, here's the book. I got all these ideas. What do you think about starting a clothing line? And I'm like, let's do it. And that was kind of the first dabble into this world. And
so you were bored, or you thought just would be cool, or
yeah, it definitely started off. It was more a project than anything else, right? It was more whatever, we were in class, we're doing what can we work on that could potentially. And I remember there was a company that we kind of aspired to be like. It was called It was called Johnny Cupcakes, if I remember correctly. And basically, he had a bunch of graphic T-shirts that have like all cupcake type memes. Anyways, but he had gotten a big following. He was pretty big. I don't know if he's still around now these days, but we kind of saw that and we're like, okay, we want to, you know, do something on our own. We want to be millionaires. We want to grow something. So maybe we can model kind of his business, and that's kind of what
Were any
started
of the
that.
other guys in your team, had they had any kind of entrepreneurial background in their families or anything like that?
No, not really, to be honest. Both of them were, you know, one, his mom ran a kids toy store, so I guess, but in a very, very small town, so nothing major there, very small mom and pop business. And on the other side, my other friend, both of his parents were consultants, so maybe they kind of were self-employed, so maybe a little bit more in that path. On my end, my dad was a banker, like I said, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom by the time I was in university. So no, not really. It was just like, you know, your kid. Remember, this is maybe 2008. 2009. So Facebook started in 2004. You know, so a lot of the social media stuff is starting to rise, and we're kind of in that middle of it, right? I'm 20 years old, kind of learning about this world of social media.
And you're seeing the potential.
You're seeing the potential, still not tying it per se to business, but seeing the potential of, man, we should work on something on our own.
Cool. I love that. I think that's great. Okay, so let's fast forward. I
Yep.
know that there was an episode in your life, in your family life, that made you have to, really pivot. Maybe you can talk about that. I know that there was an accident in your family. I think it
Yep.
was your father. So what was it about that situation? I don't want to get into the grim details, because I know that story has been told a lot. But what was it about that situation that made you reflect on, where you were going, and how you were going to get there?
Yeah, so this is 2000, and it would have been 2009. And basically, in short, you know, like I said, I won't go into the details, but my dad, in the middle of the night, he had a vein in his brain rupture after working for countless years, and then all of a sudden he finally was retired, and you know, he was thinking of doing other jobs, but he retired from the bank, and he retired in November, and then in January, it exploded. And I mentioned, like, you know, there's a couple things there that you kind of look at and you say, man, the universe has a funny way of working sometimes. He was supposed to get on a flight to go to Africa that evening, and of
Wow,
course, if that would have ruptured in the middle of a plane in the top of, you
that's
know, it would have,
unbelievable.
yeah. So you know, there's always these things that you look at and you're like, it's funny how the world works that way sometimes. But I, like, honestly, the way that it impacted me was I was already at a stage where I knew I didn't want to be I didn't want to be an engineer. I knew, like, I had started working on this t-shirt company, and I was starting to get a taste of what it took to kind of build my own thing. And that just kind of gave me this sense of like, man, life is short. Life, the snap of a finger, it could be over. And why go through a path that you don't want to go down just because it's safe, or just because
It's
um
expected.
it's expected, right? And that's a good way to put it. And that kind of incident just made me realize, man, like, if I don't do what I want to do, I don't want to get to a stage where I'm laying in a hospital bed one day because something happened and I regret the fact that I didn't give this a shot, or do this. So that's really what drove me to kind of say, no, I'm 100% there. Plan A is entrepreneurship, and that is the only plan, right? And that was
Was
kind of
your
the thought
So
process.
how did your dad pull through? Did you
Yeah, I
okay?
mean, over the years, like, it's interesting what happened, because it was, again, a rupture in his brain. He was in the hospital for a long time. You know, multiple, I think 3 brain surgeries that he had to go through, and he eventually did kind of pull through, and even the doctor was like, "Listen, Mr. Dia, I don't know how you made it through. Because just to give you context, it happened at about 2 in the morning, and he went to the hospital. We live in like a suburb outside of Toronto. So he went to the hospital in the suburb. They did a scan. It was actually my dad who, as he was about to pass out, said, "I think there's blood in my brain,"
Oh,
and he passed out. And then
whoa.
we tell it. I told that to the paramedics, and basically they do a scan, and sure enough, there was a lot of blood in his brain. And the doctor basically said, "Look, if we don't get him to surgery right now, there's a big chance that he's going to pass out, because he's going to pass away, because we're in a suburb, right? We're not in a big hospital with everything." The problem was, this is in January,
Huh.
and it was really, really cold, and there was a snowstorm. And basically they did an SOS to the hospitals in the Toronto area, and all of them were full. All of the ICU beds were full, so none of them could take him. So they do an SOS, and the closest city outside of Toronto in the US is Buffalo. So Buffalo answered the call, and they said, "Yeah, we can take him, send him over." Problem is, it was a snowstorm, so we couldn't do a helicopter. So basically, they had to put him in an ambulance and drive in a snowstorm for about 2.5 hours to get to
Goodness.
Buffalo. And they even stopped at the border because we didn't have our passports. It's 2 in the morning. So my family, me, my brother, my sister, and my mom, we stop at home. We grab our passports. We get to the border, and sure enough, the ambulance is pulled over to the side, waiting for us to
No.
bring our passports. So they wouldn't let him through.
No.
Yeah, he's in the back. And so anyways, the doctor, yeah, it's crazy. The doctor was like, "Look, Mr. Dia, like, not even including that whole thing, the fact that, literally, out of 10 people, 9 would have died, right? If we take the remaining 10%, out of that 10%, another 90% would have had some long form disability, whether they can't walk or they can't talk anymore, or, you so happen to be that, like, 1% that somehow you still have your memory, you can walk, you can talk, everything is in general working quite well. Over the years, he's had some, downs, but anyways, we don't need to kind of get too deep
I
into
mean,
that, but
okay,
yeah.
so this could be the topic of a whole other podcast,
Totally.
in terms of like healthcare and outcomes and all the rest of it. I love the fact that you pulled together as a family to save your dad, and it's testimony to your dad's strength as a human being that he was able to pull through the way he did. Now, that story and what your dad had to go through, as soon as I hear it, the first thing I think of is, did the bank treat him well?
You know,
And we won't name the bank.
yeah, let's not name the bank. I mean, it doesn't really matter. In Canada, there's only 5 core banks, right? Like, it's a very different system than in the US. We have much more regulations in that
I'm in
in that sense.
Montreal, so I know what you're talking
Oh,
about.
you're in Montreal. Okay, so there you go. You know exactly what we're talking about. The bank starts with an R and ends with a C. But basically, it's interesting, right? I think stress in general, whether it's entrepreneurial stress or corporate stress, like the stress of the world we live in, which is pressure that is created upon us to achieve certain goals and reach certain levels. Whether you're good at managing that stress on the surface, it still always is there, right? There's still always that pressure, and that pressure either is going to be let out outwardly, or it's going to just build internally. And whether you can't really blame any bank, you can't blame the bank, you can't blame anything other than the fact that the way we live in our society, I think, creates a lot of stress. And you see it a lot with entrepreneurs, where they are in hustle mode, building their business, building their business, building their business. And then they finally sell, and they can breathe, and they finally let it out. And then all of a sudden they get sick, or all of a sudden, I have a friend who is
Very
exactly the same
common.
thing happened. Very
It's
common,
very
right?
common.
It's because your body is in this weird state of, oh, we just got to keep pushing through, pushing through, pushing
It's
through. You
fight
wake
or
up.
flight. You're in
Yeah,
fight mode.
you're in fight mode. And then once you're finally able to let it go, all of that stress just kind of releases in some way, shape, or form. And then boom, like, you get sick, something happens, and it again puts you in perspective, we live in a very, very interesting world, especially in North America.
I mean, I don't know how many entrepreneurs that I've talked to over the years, especially those who come from humbler beginnings. A lot of the first generation entrepreneurs that I've met and talked to over the years, they talk about how, if they had to rely on the banks to be able to get ahead and do what they've got to do, they would starve. And, I'm not trying to, throw shade on the banks or anything like that. They've got a job to do. They've got a business to run. They've got profits to generate. But I think that there's a lot that has changed. When my father was coming up, I mean, I remember going with him to the bank and sitting in the bank manager's office, and the bank manager would be talking to my dad and giving him advice on business and saying, well, maybe you should do less of this and more of that and try that and try this and so forth. We're not seeing that so much anymore. And I think that, I mean, yes, there are other industries that have come in and take their place, but I think that there's something to be said for putting profits ahead of people in a lot of cases. So, but anyways, we'll put a
Oh,
pin in that because again, we can go all day long on
we
that
can go on a
subject.
tangent there.
Yeah, yeah. So now this happens, you realize that, hey, you know what? 30 years into a corporation and hoping for the best at the end of it all might not be the route that you want to take.
Exactly.
You're doing the t-shirt thing. You obviously didn't end in the t-shirt thing. So what happened next in your entrepreneurial journey? Oh yeah, and before we get there, okay,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
we're going to step out of the t-shirt thing, right?
Okay.
But I want to, for the benefit of our listeners, I want to understand, like, what were the lessons that you learned, early lessons that you learned in the t-shirt business that have stuck with you and served you, all the way through to Funnelytics?
Yeah. So first and foremost, let's make one thing clear. It wasn't a business. I just had t-shirts and we sold them, right? Like, it was not a business. It was, I like to think it was, but it wasn't. So I think the first thing is
It
like,
was a hobby and we
it was
made
a
some money
hobby.
at
Like
it.
it honestly, but it doesn't matter. Like the first thing I think that really came from this was it made me realize, like, it was the first time that I Googled, how to sell online, right? It was
Oh,
because of this t-shirt business, because we printed our first round of designs and t-shirts and we sold them. We sold them very quickly. We sold them to our friends and our family, three guys, in university, a pretty big network between all of us or friends. And so it went really, really fast. And basically my assumption was, well, let's all three of us, we were really naive. We're like, let's just order a whole lot more t-shirts because clearly we know what we're doing. So we ordered a lot more t-shirts. To be honest, it was stupid. But yeah, so it made me realize, like, that was the first thing is like, look, friends and family.
first search was how to do t-shirt business. Second search was how do I liquidate a bunch of t-shirts?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But basically that was the first kind of lesson, was like, look, friends and family might support you, and but it's a false positive, right? It doesn't mean anything. If you can't get a stranger to buy your product, then you've got nothing, right?
At
So
full price.
at full price, key. And I think that was, one of the major lessons from that.
It's a good
Um,
lesson.
yeah, it also gave me a lot of clarity around just how much is involved in starting something. The amount of things you have to think about and learn. And, people think, well, like, look, you incorporate, you're a business. Like, okay, well, step one, like, cool, good job. You got a name. I got a logo now. Cool. Like, good for you. But, so I think it kind of gave me that foundation of like, okay, well, what is this? What is the process and the intricacies and how much work is really involved? And also, nobody is going to do it for you. Nobody's going to do the work for you. Like, if you want to start a t-shirt business, you got to figure out the logo. You got to figure out the name. You got to figure out how to build a website. You got to figure out how to write these articles and get the product pictures and make it look good. And you got to figure out
What
pricing
is a
and
UPC code?
yeah, exactly. Like, you got to figure out how to print them and what orders to, like, all of that stuff is things that that I learned in the early days of running that, to kind of like, wow, like, there's a lot of intricacies to this, right?
Did your engineering training help you there?
I think I don't know if it was the engineering training or just more how my brain works. I'm a very logic minded person. Like I think that helped me do engineering more so than engineering helped me, in
Understood.
that sense, if that
Gotcha.
makes sense.
Gotcha.
So I always have thought in systems and I've always broken down problems in a logical, step by step way, right? So I think certainly kind of going and approaching that has helped, right? I'm less on the creative side, much more on that kind of logical side, if that makes
How did
sense.
your parents feel about this?
About the t-shirts?
Yeah, about pivoting away from school and going hard into business.
My parents have always been very, very supportive of all three of us. So I have two siblings. So they've always been very supportive regardless. Their thought was always, look, we can provide you with the education. You go and do what you want with it afterwards, right? And that's always kind of been their mindset. And the for them, I think they felt very comfortable with the idea that, well, if it doesn't work, you have an engineering degree to fall back on, right? Like, so it was more of like in that sense. And they've never said that to me outright, but like
Yeah, but
it,
every parent thinks that. Every parent
exactly,
thinks that.
right? So it's like if I went and said I'm going to become a comedian, maybe they'd probably be like, really?
Pull
Like,
him back from the edge. Pull
yeah,
him
yeah,
back.
exactly. You're not even that funny. So, but the fact that it was like, okay, entrepreneurship, I'm looking to start and build a business, but are they more traditional in that sense? Of course, they were born in the, 50s and 60s. It's a lot more that mindset of climb the ladder and become an executive and keep growing in that sense. But
Did your dad feel the sting of what you were telling us earlier with regards to I spent all this time dedicating myself to my career and supporting my family, and just when I get to the point where I can step back and slow down and smell the roses, this thing happens. Was he feeling the sting of that? And do you think that contributed to their attitude?
you know what? No, because like my dad, if you ever, have a chance to meet him one day, I don't know if you would, but anyways,
Hey, I come to TO every now and then, so
there
it's
you go.
possible.
He is one of the, especially since the accident. I think, coming this close to death, you realize, fuck it, like the life is too short, right? Like and you kind of realize that all of this stuff is noise. And I think he got to a place of calm and peace after that happened, that kind of made him, yeah, happiness, like whatever, like life can end tomorrow, and I'm forever grateful that I get to meet my grandchildren and I get to, I got past that point, that yeah, as long as everybody's happy, as long as his kids are happy and they're doing stuff that are drive happiness, then no, there's
Yeah,
no
it's about
correction.
perspective.
It's
You know,
it
I
changed
tell
the
you,
perspective.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen people face those types of circumstances, and you'd like to think that, hey, anyone that's gone through something like this is gonna have some kind of spiritual awakening and smell the roses and blah 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 blah. I think your dad's still in the rare air. I mean, he was in
Yeah,
the rare air that
totally.
he survived such a harrowing, a health tragedy or whatever you want to call it. And I think he's also rare in the sense that he allowed it to shape his perspective and have more of a rounded perspective, because there's tons of people who start that way, but 6, 7, 8 months later, they tend to fall right back into their old habits.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife, when she first, so my, again, a banker on Bay Street in Toronto, always wearing a suit, and my dad is black. He was the first black senior vice president of any major bank in Canada. So, he was very not stern, but certainly, get out of my way, and don't, I
He
don't
had
have
a
time
he
for
had a
small talk.
tough row to hoe.
He had, definitely, right, an immigrant from West Africa coming to Canada and kind of going up the corporate ladder. So I remember, it's funny, my wife, who at the time was kind of just my girlfriend, like we just started dating. We go down to the financial district on Bay Street, and you could see my dad walking from kind of a mile away. First of all, the only like black man and walking, but also the way he walked has a very like direct, purposeful, like I'm going somewhere, and
I'm
that's
not
it.
sauntering anywhere.
No, exactly. I'm on a destination, and he was coming to meet us for lunch, and one of the first questions he asked my wife was, "So what are your intentions with my son?" And she's just like,
Tell me his tongue was planted firmly in his cheek, or that was a straight out question.
no, it was a straight up question.
Wow.
And even but like, my wife is very, very personal. So she, but anyways, it was just funny because now you look at him and his, like, you'd look at him and you'd speak to him and you'd be like, that's not the same person, right? That person back then who was climbing that corporate ladder is not the same person as you see today, who has been, retired and had this accident. The way that he approaches life, it's interesting for sure to see how it changes people.
Well, I mean, he sounds like a great guy, and sounds like I should maybe have him on the podcast,
Yeah,
because
yeah, you should.
that sounds like a whole other topic of conversation. And I think it would be very worthwhile for people to hear it, because I think there's too many people that, are left brain thinkers, and they see that, soft skills, fuzzy spiritual awakening stuff as being not important. This doesn't belong in the corporate world, or it doesn't belong in the practical world. And I think hearing from someone who's gone through what your dad has gone through in terms of climbing the corporate ladder, overcoming the odds, obviously being a banker, you've got to make really, really tough decisions, and and do a lot of analytics that have nothing to do with personalities and people's feelings. For him to have gone through all that and then get to where he is now, that sounds like an amazing story. But this podcast is about you, so we're going to focus on you. And okay, so talk to me about. Let's jump ahead. So you go through the t-shirt business, and you get knocked around a little bit, and now you're saying, I'm going to do this big time.
Yeah.
And you're armed, I'm assuming, with a lot of the knowledge that your dad had from the banking world. How did you cope with or manage going out and getting funding, like real funding, real money for your business ventures?
So that's not how it played out at all, actually. So I ran the t-shirt business, and I knew by this point that I ended up Googling, like I said, how do you sell online, right? Because I couldn't figure out how to sell these t-shirts. So that's what gave me, or put me down this rabbit hole of, how do you turn a stranger into a customer online? And I became obsessed with this idea. I became like, again, this is about 2000, maybe now by this point it's 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. And on one hand, I'm working as an engineer. I was making at the time like 55, 60,000 a year. I don't even remember. And on the other
So the
hand,
t-shirts were a side hustle.
oh yeah. T-shirts weren't, it didn't make any money. Like I said, it wasn't a business. We sold t-shirts, here and there. So I'm working as an engineer, and we're doing this side project over here, and we have the boxes of t-shirts in our condo, and I'm learning, how do I build websites? How do I sell online, etc. And I bought a product. I remember when I Googled how to sell online, I came across a page. And again, this is 2009. So Google didn't have the same, it was really easy to advertise on Google back then, right? Like you could advertise almost anything. So I would land on one of these pages that says, are you tired of your job? Do you wish you could make $10,000 a month from the beach with just a laptop and an internet connection? I'm like, yes, I do wish.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
60,000 a year. I can make 10,000 a month from my laptop on a beach. Sounds great. Only $47. Buy this product and we'll show you how. Right. And sure enough, I did. I bought the product and I went down this rabbit hole of, this world of online marketing. And I didn't make $10,000 a month from that product.
No.
Like, no, really? But I mean, now I make significantly more than $10,000 a month. But that first, like, what happened there, it kind of taught me how to basically, that whole product was like, okay, here's how you build a website. Here's how you get products from, and use affiliate links to earn commissions. And here's how you write reviews so that they rank on Google, so that you can kind of attract traffic that way. So I started a little mini side project. So I had my job, I had my t-shirt business, and then I was running or testing another side project based on this product that I had bought. It was called qualitysurvivalknives.com. And that was the
I
first.
love it. I love
Yeah.
the name. I love
Yeah.
the name.
So here's how my mind works. Okay. Here's how I was thinking. Because I'm so logic based, basically, this is again 2010-ish. Remember in 2012, Mayan calendar was supposed to end and it was supposed to be the end of the world. So my roommate, who was also my partner in the t-shirt business, he's an outdoors guy. He loves outdoors. So he had all of these survival knives. Like he just collected them. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm supposed to sell something through like little affiliate links. So I took pictures of his survival knives. I wrote little review articles for them to try to get them ranked on Google, with the thought process that in 2 years from now, lots of people are going to be searching for survival stuff because the end of the world is coming, according to the Mayan calendar.
I love it. I love
So
it.
that was my entire thought process. Now I was way too early and anyways. So I built this little mini survival knife website, and it took me about 3 months or so. I kind of created all the articles. I learned how to build websites on WordPress and basically learned all that stuff myself. And after I kind of wrote all these articles, I was like, okay, this is taking too long for these things to rank and I'm not getting any traffic. So I bought another course on how to like advertise on Google, how to use pay-per-click advertising, for specific keywords and all that stuff. So now I went and spent $100 to bid on some of the keywords that would say, like knife review or whatever, right? Like the specific brand review, right? So my article
Save
would
yourself from the apocalypse knife keyword.
yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. That's basically that was the thought process. And I share this story quite often, but basically I spend $100 over the course of like a weekend. Maybe it was about a week, but I forgot about it. I kind of just put it up and then I went on with my 20-ish-year-old ways of just whatever partying and whatever it was. And I remember I got an email saying I got a commission, $5.23. So congratulations, you made a sale. $5.23 was my commission on this knife. And I was elated. Like I was so
It was the sweetest $5 you ever made in
it
your
was
life.
the sweetest $5 I'd ever made ever. And I log into Google and $99 and some odd cents were spent to make that $5.23. And I went from being the happiest person in the world to being like, screw this. This is bullshit. This guy scammed me. This is not real.
That's why Google's so rich.
Yeah, exactly. Google just made $100 for me and I made $5. This doesn't work. But basically, after I kind of calmed down, it made me kind of realize that, wait a minute, I got a random person to actually pull out their credit card and come to this website that I built in 3 months and pay something, right? And that was another kind of aha moment for me that like, there is something working here. Now, I haven't figured it all out because the math doesn't work, but something is working. And that made me obsessed. Like that put me in this path of learning about sales, copywriting, persuasion, funnels, email marketing, SEO, like basically everything under the sun around how does this methodology of acquiring customers work? How does this puzzle work? And yeah, like that's just kind of the path that I ended up going down. Oh, but I still had not made my $10,000 a month and I still had my job and I still wasn't making anything from our t-shirts. We were sort of selling our t-shirts more like in the Toronto area. It wasn't online. So I was still at this crossroads and this is about 2000, and I had to kind of decide, okay, well, what do I want to do now? Right. Because I don't want to stay as an engineer. I'm clearly not going to be a millionaire from my survival knife website in $5.23 increments.
Regardless of what happens when the Mayan apocalypse happens.
Yeah. Regardless, at this stage, I got to face the reality of I got to make some decisions here. So I decided to go to London to go to the UK to basically do my MBA. So I knew by this point I wanted to do business. I knew I wanted to be in the world of business. I didn't know much about business other than, some
But your logical brain told you I better learn something.
Yeah, I better learn about accounting and I better learn about these things. Plus another way for me to go back to my parents and be like, if all else fails, I got an MBA.
Got my MBA.
Right? Exactly. I got an engineering degree in my MBA, right? So of course they're like, yeah, that sounds logical. Go and do it. So I took out a loan for some living expenses and all of that stuff while I was living there. Did my MBA, but during my MBA, all I did, like I missed classes, I don't know how much, because all I was doing was figuring out this online marketing stuff. I was just so obsessed with it. I learned about
It was like a puzzle you needed to crack.
exactly. I just needed to figure out how does all of this work. And I finally got kind of my first real opportunity starting a Mandarin language school. So while I was in London, one of my colleagues in my MBA came to me because he saw how obsessed I was with this online marketing stuff. Do you want to start a Mandarin school? I'm like, what do you mean? You mean like Chinese? Like you want to teach people Chinese? It's like, yeah. I was like, dude, I've never been to China. I don't know how to speak Mandarin. You don't know how to speak Mandarin. What are you talking about? And he's like, look, I can license this curriculum from this Chinese school in China where they teach foreigners, Mandarin. I'll handle the operations. I'll find the teachers. I'll find the location. I'll handle that stuff. You figure out how to get customers in the door through this online marketing stuff that you keep talking about.
It
And
was almost like an affiliate, and almost
yeah, but like we became partners and we're just like, okay. And so we licensed this curriculum from this school in China. We basically bought it and we got exclusive rights to London, to the UK territory. They didn't have schools anywhere outside of China. So they're like, sure, you want to pay us money to license this? And like you're not gonna make any money, so who cares? So I set up my
silly
first
white people. Well, silly
yeah,
brown
yeah,
people,
yeah,
whatever.
exactly. What are you doing? You guys think you could teach Mandarin? But sure enough, I built the first kind of marketing funnel. It was the first time like all the pieces fit. It's like, okay, here's how ads fit. Here's how we collect emails. Here's how we send follow-up sequences. Here's where we send them to get a call scheduled and how we do, so basically I figured out the engine. Now it was the first real test. It was the first real product that I could go and test this on. And it worked. We grew quickly. And within 8 months, we were making enough money that the school in China was kind of pissed and decided to buy us out. And they were like,
Wow.
we don't like that you guys have our curriculum and that you have full control over it. So we are going to buy you out. And
I,
that paid,
I hope you got a good price.
yeah, we got a for 8 months of work, we got a great price. It paid off my student loans, and
Nice.
it was a nice win for me. But for me, it was validation that, man, if I could do this for Mandarin, I can probably do this for a few other different types of
Good for
businesses.
anything.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what then
Okay.
from then on, that was it.
Okay. So this is love it. Amazing. If you were talking to your 19, 20-year-old self that's just about to put the money down and get those t-shirts, knowing what you learned at that point, what would you have told Mikael at that point to do differently? Or is there anything he could have done differently?
I think the biggest thing was, I don't know if I would have done anything differently in the sense of like, why did I start it? For us, it was
No, the why is easy. I mean, the why is, we understand the why. I
yeah,
mean, the thing I'm hearing is that you love learning
yep,
and you've got a typical engineer's mind in the sense that you like to pull all the pieces apart and figure out how they go work together and all the
yep,
relationships and and then put it all back together again. I get that. That's really clear. That's a skill set that a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, lack. I think
mm,
a lot of entrepreneurs they go more by gut,
yep.
and intuition rather than by data and facts and processes. And it tends to be less popular with a lot of entrepreneurs. Would you recommend that today? Is that a strategy you think would work today? I mean, you did go the academic route. I mean, I don't know if it was just to make your folks happy and make sure that they would fund
Part of
your
that was for
education.
sure. It was also because I didn't want to work on something.
Okay.
I would rather learn about business, and because I've always been very not, I wouldn't say arrogant, but confident enough that I could figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So I would rather learn about business than do engineering, if that
Yeah.
makes
You
sense,
were
right?
grinding in a job that you didn't like. I mean,
Exactly.
that's
And
clear, and you saw no future in it. So that's easy to understand. I recently came across a podcast by, well, it's Alex Hormozy, and he is talking about how the value of an education, a value of a higher education is kind of questionable these days? I mean, aside from obviously, wanting to be a doctor or, an engineer putting up a building and, those types of really, hard skill types of tasks. If you had to do it all over again, or if your 16-year-old son, wanted to plot out his future, would you put the same kind of value on the whole higher education thing?
Is the
Like for business,
scenario,
for
is this
business,
is
for
this
business.
yeah, but is this scenario that you're talking about in back in 2004 when I entered
No, I'm talking about
university?
now. No, I'm talking about now.
100% no. I don't even want my kids to go to university. I want my kids to be homeschooled. Like we're thinking and moving them towards that. I think it's a complete waste of time. It's there to create a very specific type of person. And no, you have access to all of the information you need right here, right now, at the click of a button. Um, and nothing will ever beat doing it, right? So, for example, when I started the t-shirt stuff, that's kind of what I was trying to say is like doing it. Like it's a lot of stuff, but you can read about it and you're like, cool, I know theoretically what I have to do, but doing it is a completely different thing and nothing replaces that.
I always think of that line, Mike Tyson's line, I don't care how many classes you've taken, but no plan you have survives your first punch in the face.
Totally, totally. All your plans are changed when you get punched in the face for sure. And entrepreneurship is a whole lot of punches in the face that you just don't get from a book, right? And that's just the reality.
Yeah. So I love that. I think, look, I don't want to get too much, down that rabbit hole, but I think these days, if you look at AI and how that's affecting the landscape, and I think no matter what you're talking about, whether you're talking about the military, whether you're talking about politics, whether you're talking about, just about anything that doesn't involve hard science. I
Yep.
mean, the landscape is changing so quickly. I think the winners are going to be the folks that know how to teach themselves
100%.
quickly and know how to do the trial and error thing with some discipline and some diligence. And those are the folks that are always going to outperform the theoretical folks.
Yeah, I fully agree. At the end of the day, you can't build tough skin by again reading something. Like no amount of conversations or books will prepare you for when you're laying awake in bed at night thinking about how am I going to make sure I can pay my employees next week. Like you can read about it as much as you want, but you will never know what that feeling is until you are in that spot. And that's just the reality of it. And that's why, yeah, I think university at this stage, unless like you said, it's for doctors, it's for, engineers, it's for basic, maybe lawyers, even that is, starting to get questionable with AI. Like other than that, there's no point.
Yeah. And I think that we're getting to the point now that we have to rethink a lot of these things from an international competition standpoint. I
Yep.
think a lot of governments need to rethink that whole, it takes 10 years to make a lawyer, it takes 10 years to make a doctor. I mean, that that whole thing has got to change because everything's just going way too fast. And if we don't change with the times, someone else is, and we're going to be left behind.
Yeah,
I mean,
it would be, I mean, it is what it is, but I think it's stupid that schools don't teach you how to use ChatGPT right now. Like they should embrace it and realize that this is the world. It's like saying back in the 80s, hey, you know what? Still figure out how to do when was the last time you did long division on a piece of paper? Like what it's great, fine, but like, what does it matter? I don't need it. I have a phone, I have calculators, they do it for me. So let's use our
yeah, I
tools to advance.
remember a quote from Einstein when someone asked him his address at the beginning of an article. The journalist was saying, "I got to fill out this form. I need your address." And he reaches over to the phone book to look up his address because he didn't memorize his address.
Yeah, exactly.
And the journalist was like, "What the heck? You don't even know your address?" And he was like, "Well, why do I need to memorize my address when I could just look it up?" I mean,
Exactly.
it's silly. So I get the principle, and I think it's absolutely right. I mean, I think we definitely have to teach basics in school, and I think understanding social, how to understand how do you interact with other people, and how your relationship with yourself, like understanding who you are, and how you work as a person. I think those things are young people need guidance as far as that stuff is concerned, and teaching them how to learn, like teaching them how to figure out, okay, what do I want to learn? and how do I need to do it? Like, what do I need to know to learn anything I want to learn? I mean, I think those are the
Y-
key skills that we need to give young people today.
I agree. I think the delivery mechanism in which we do it is wrong, right?
Yeah,
I
100%.
agree that yes, everyone needs to know how to learn. Everyone needs to know how to socially interact. But I think that the way we deliver that in the school system is flawed,
Well, how
and that
many times I mean, I'm sure you've seen it as an employer. I've read it in many articles and studies, that people coming out of the school systems, they come to the workplace and they're like tabula rasa. I mean, you've got management teams have to start from scratch and educate them on this is how it's done in the real world.
yeah,
It's not, school doesn't work here.
no,
Like you got to, I get that you know how to add, subtract, and multiply, but there's a whole bunch of other things that you need to
totally,
know.
totally.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, that's cool. We both agree on that. Okay, as we're wrapping up here, tell us a little bit about what Funnelytics is and talk to us about how does it help business owners and operations? Like, why did you start it and how does it help?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, the simplest way to think about Funnelytics in terms of what it is basically think of it as a whiteboard, a digital whiteboard that allows me to visualize this entire kind of customer acquisition strategy. So, my ads, my pages, my emails, like basically how am I getting customers for my business? And what it allows me to do is then overlay data on top to see what's working, what's not, how are people flowing through these things that we created. So I kind of mentioned like, it took me a long time to understand how the puzzle all fits together, right? But once you can visualize it, once you can look at it and you can see a picture of, okay, this is how we're currently acquiring customers, not charts and graphs and spreadsheets, but actually like this is the page we send people to. And on this page, there's a form for them to put in their name and email. And then after they fill it out, they go to this page. And
The
basically you can
relationship
visual.
between the numbers, the story
Yeah,
between the numbers.
exactly, right? So it paints this story of this is exactly what we do to acquire customers, but then it overlays the performance of that particular thing. So it started because after I kind of exited that Mandarin school, I had the confidence to kind of say, hey, let me do this for other businesses. Let me start an agency. Let me build these acquisition systems, acquisition engines for I called it funnels, but for businesses. And I would always face the same problem, which was how do I visualize this? And I would usually use like a PowerPoint presentation. And if I could visualize it for them, something would click in their heads of like, oh, I get what you're doing. You're not just saying SEO or Facebook ads, right? Like I understand that this is a system.
Conversion rates.
Yeah, exactly. But then I kept facing the same challenge, which was I'm very analytical. Most people are not. So when I would send them a report where they would see a chart or a graph or they would see a spreadsheet, it's like it would be in one ear out the other. They would glaze over it and it meant nothing. And
How
it
do
would
I
just
know this is even true?
yeah, how do I know this is true? How do I know this is working? Right. And that's when I kind of had the idea or the kind of epiphany moment of, hey, what if I just take these numbers and put them like in a manual way on my PowerPoint that I sold them to begin with? So now they can see, okay, hey, this was the picture that I showed you. This was the system, right? Now I can show you there's 20% people going from this step to this step. There's 5 going here, etc. Right. And then they could see that and I could point to them and say, this right here is the bottleneck. This right here is what I need to fix in order for us to keep improving. Because if I can get this number from 5% to 8%, look how much more money we're going to make. Right. And it gave them this aha moment of this is how this works. So that is what I basically became the idea of Funnelytics.
I mean,
Can I
I'll tell
build
you,
this?
when I looked at the website and looked at some, what you're doing, the thing that hit me was it seemed like, the way Steve Jobs had to go out to the record industry and basically make them all play nice together. So for their mutual benefit of having this platform for selling their music, because,
Yep.
getting all these different platforms to talk to each other is truly a gargantuan task. I mean,
Exactly.
anyone who's tried to do it, tried to wrangle all of these different folks, the Facebook, the Googles, the Shopify's, the Amazons, trying to get all those folks to talk together and get the information to play nice together. And that's no small feat.
No, it's not. It costs a lot of money on the engineering front. I did raise money for Funnelytics, so that's probably a part two of our podcast. I can talk about what that looks
A
like.
lot
And
of people have interviewed you about that. So
yeah,
we'll
yeah.
put some of the links to some of those in the show notes, and people can go down that journey on another on
There
another.
you go. So yeah, it is expensive. It is not easy, and it's been a challenge for us, even as a business. Like there's this thing in the software space, and it's more prevalent in the software space, but it's really in all industries, this thing called product market fit. And we talk a lot about it in the software space, but it's just this concept of how do you know your product and your market are in sync, right? And it's working really well in that sense. And finding product market fit is not an easy feat. It takes a long time. It's a lot of testing, a lot of iterations, and it's constantly tweaking both sides. It's tweaking the product, but also tweaking the market and figuring out which one, where's that fit so that we can
And
just
it's
double down
constantly
and scale.
changing.
It's constantly changing. And with a tool like ours, it is a gargantuan task with all the different technologies that are out there. How do you kind of make it work for everybody? And you can't make it work for everybody. In the early days when I was starting Funnelytics, I didn't know anything about software. I didn't, I hired a junior, let's call him an intermediate developer to build this analytics platform for this vision I had. And like, I was very naive in the sense of like, oh, well, yeah, we can solve this big idea problem. And it cost us a lot of time. It cost us a lot of money. People would come in and then churn, and it would just
If I
basically
buy
be
100 T-shirts and all my family buys them, that means if I buy 1,000 T-shirts, it'll be no problem.
exactly. So if I can just integrate with 1,000 platforms, I can get 1,000,000 people, but no, it doesn't work that way. So
But
it's
you
a
know what?
learning
The
curve.
thing that I take away from this story is there's a few things. So one, I love the fact that you worked on getting buy-in with your family to support you on this journey. I love the fact you didn't quit your job and just go whole hog into T-shirts. So that's a smart thing. Have your base covered. Do your side gig, learn your lessons, get your punches in the nose, and then when you're ready, go. That's really important. Leaders are readers. You were willing to study the things you needed to study to solve the questions. You didn't just hire people and say you figure it out. You needed to understand it. I think that's really important for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs need to learn at least the basics and have a command of at least the basics before they start dishing out tasks to other people. And then the whole trial and error thing. You were willing to get dirty, making mistakes, learning, making mistakes, learning, reiterating until you had a product that worked.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, like if we wrap up kind of on this note, I think one of the things that most people don't realize about entrepreneurship is that there is no end game, right? Like there is no you have the championship is you get a win, but it doesn't mean that you're done. You still have next season, and the next season will come with its own set of challenges, and you get past a certain level. And you get new challenges for the next level, and it's things that you never thought about, you never faced or whatever, or you get your accounts frozen randomly for something. Like
Or
there's
you get
lots of things.
hacked.
You get hacked. There's lots of things that you just can't expect, and it's just this constant game of challenges. So you either love the challenges, which is the trial and error and continuing that, or you will not survive the game, right? Because the game isn't about getting the exit. The game is about continuously facing these challenges. If you get the exit, or if you get to a certain revenue level or whatever, cool. Like it's great. It's a good feeling. But again, you kind of face the next set of challenges afterwards. And there's always ups and downs across this. So
Yeah, you got to
it's
love
not
the
for
journey.
everybody.
You got to
You have
love
to
the
love the
journey.
journey. You have
Yeah,
to.
you can't be about the outcome. It's got to be about the journey. I mean, you're right. Most entrepreneurs I've ever talked to, even if they exit, depending on where they are in their stage of life,
Yeah,
they're either bored and can't wait to get into the next thing, or
totally.
they've got some other big project that they're doing. It may not have to do with making money. It may be
Yeah.
philanthropic. It may be something else. But usually they're looking for the next challenge, the next adventure.
Exactly. And that's just the name of the game.
Well, listen, this has been an amazing conversation. Definitely want to do a little bit more about the numbers, because I know you're a real numbers guy and understanding that. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs can benefit from understanding, having a little bit more understanding on how to raise money properly. And I think that's important. And hey, I'd love to talk to your dad too.
You know what? I'll convince him because I think you'd have a great conversation with him.
Well, this has been amazing, Mikael. Thank you so much. And, you've been leading like a boss for a while now, and I really appreciate it. And it's nice to talk to a Canadian.
There you go. Cheers. Thank you very much.
All right.